Okay, we are now live. Hi, Jacob Sundstrom, managing editor of Fear the Fin, with Marcus White, staff writer, also at Fear the Fin. Hi, say hi to the people. All
Hello,
right,
friend.
so this is actually working this time. So this is already like 100% better than last time we tried to do this. We're now 5 out of 6 games into the Sharks' preseason schedule, which means real, actual hockey is almost here. You were able to watch at least the third period of last night's game, which was a 3-1 loss to the Coyotes. Jonas Donskoi scored. What's kind of your takeaway from last night's game?
Well, so I guess my biggest takeaway from last night's game is who did play and who didn't play. Michael Haley draws into the lineup last night with Joel Ward out. I think that more to Haley speaks to how well Tommy Wingles and Matt Nieto have played in this preseason. I think I would read into it. Maybe I'm reading too much into it that none of the young guys have kind of assumed the responsibility and really taken a spot from one of those older players. And if they had, I think they would have been in last night, which was seemingly pretty much a dress rehearsal for the regular season. DeBoer said that most of his veterans would just play in that one game. Some might play in two, but if necessary, they'll call up guys from the Barracuda. I think you'll definitely see Goldobin, Gaudreau, and LeBanc get another chance tomorrow, but I think the biggest takeaway is that they did not play last night.
Yeah, and even if we assume that that's true, right, that those guys are not going to make the roster or whatever, I don't really understand the decision to give a guy like Haley that kind of valuable ice time and that valuable game time. That seems to me just terrible, terrible coaching decision. Michael Haley does not need practice beating the shit out of somebody. He's really good at it. He's done it for many years, and I promise you could pull him out there on Wednesday cold, and he could try to beat the shit out of whatever goon the Kings roll out onto the ice. So I mean that's just unforgivable because these guys only get so much, ice. There's only so much ice time to go around, man. You got to give one of these kids, especially a chance against an actual NHL lineup, such as it is, given that it's Arizona, of course, but the chance to play with actual NHL players.
Yeah.
This is a huge opportunity for them, and you're taking it away so that Michael Haley can go get his knuckles broken. I just don't get it. That makes no sense to me.
Well, Haley had only played in 2 preseason games before last night, which I think could have weighed into DeBoer's decision. If they are going to send Haley down, maybe they wanted him to get another preseason game. But I agree. I think it really would have been a good look, to see a player like Goldobin or a player like LeBanc, see if they could have played in that third line role that Joel Ward was going to slot into last night. You know what you're getting with Michael Haley. I don't know if you know exactly what you're getting with those other 3 guys, and I think it would have been a valuable opportunity to see what they could do. But, maybe DeBoer doesn't want to give any of them an edge until the preseason's actually over, and he would have been kind of forecasting who was going to make the Sharks lineup by playing them last night. But I agree. I think it was a valuable ice time that one of them could have gotten, but in his defense, they had played 5 games in the preseason up till last, I believe 5. 4? I'm not sure how many preseason. 4 preseason. 4. So they played 4 preseason games. They've played in every single one of them. But I agree with you. That was Arizona's NHL lineup. That would have been a really good barometer of at least one of the players. We'll see what kind of lineup Anaheim ices tomorrow. I think they're going to probably play a pretty good team. So I think DeBoer will be able to get a pretty good judge of what some of those guys are capable of. But it does feel a bit like a missed opportunity.
And even to me, if you want to give a guy, kind of a veteran guy like Haley, some more ice time or whatever, I would still much rather have a guy like Ryan Carpenter getting that anyway. Yeah. That's a guy that has put in his time, that led the team in the Barracuda in scoring last year. Great organizational guy, good dude. If you want to do something like that, and that's fine. There's a coaching decision. Give it to Ryan. That guy deserves it, and you send him packing this early to keep a guy like Michael Haley. That's insulting, honestly.
Well, he thinks I disagree with it, but DeBoer thinks that there's still a role for guys like Michael Haley in the NHL. He was asked about it on Wednesday. Haley got into a scrap, and he was asked about, if he's going to have a chance to make the team. And he mentioned the Sharks' record with Haley in the lineup last year was really good. And he referred to him as an important part of the team. I'm not saying I agree with it. It's just what Pete DeBoer's reasoning was. And I can see, as a coach who's been around a long time, who, respects the game, and I think and loves the game as much as he does. I think, they see a guy like Haley, they see how hard he works, they see, he is a good presence in the locker room. I think, that could often be overstated, but to guys, in the locker room, that's important to them. But I agree. I do think a guy like Ryan Carpenter, especially like you said, leading the Barracuda in scoring last year, he can play center, he can take faceoffs.
Yep.
It would have made sense to give him a longer look than I think Haley. But for whatever reason, he provides an element that a lot of the guys on the Sharks don't, and I don't think that element has much of a place anymore. DeBoer disagrees, and Michael Haley's still here.
I think, to me, the biggest takeaway, the most disappointing thing so far about this preseason, not just for the Sharks, but in general, is that it feels like the NHL hasn't learned anything. You think about like the Stanley Cup final last year. Okay, we've got three guys on the Penguins. The three guys, okay, Phil Kessel, Malkin, and Crosby. All three of those guys have been heavily criticized for their locker room presence. Heavily.
Yeah.
Phil Kessel especially, Malkin especially. I mean, Crosby just because he's good and had only won one cup, obviously. They won with two locker room cancers and two guys that don't play defense.
Yeah.
I don't know what more do you want? The Penguins had the lowest hits per time on ice, per minute, of any team in the postseason, and they won the cup. And they didn't just win; they crushed everyone.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think the Sharks being in the Western Conference makes Michael Haley a reality more than anything.
I think you're right too.
I think they see heavy teams like Los Angeles, and don't get me wrong, the Sharks are still, even without Michael Haley, they are still a very heavy team.
Absolutely,
check well, and I would argue that Barclay Goodrow provides a more useful heavy presence than Michael Haley does. He plays super well below the goal line, cycles the puck extremely well. It seems like every time he's been on the ice, he's played a lot with Wingels and Carlson, and they were dominant on the half boards and below the goal line. That's a useful heavy element, I think. I think Haley's a proven AHL scorer. He's very good at that level. Hasn't been able to translate that into the NHL. And I think Goodrow does what he brings to the team better. That being said, Haley does scrap, and, Jared Bull played on Wednesday for Anaheim. Randy Carlyle iced him. I'm not sure if Los Angeles has an enforcer type, but that could be a reason that Haley's kept up, especially on that first part of the trip. But, with San Jose going east and playing against some of these fast Eastern Conference teams next week for the next 5 games of the regular season after the first, maybe Haley's time with the team doesn't last long and one of those young guys gets called up.
Right. Yeah, and obviously that's definitely a possibility. So I mean, I think now we're kind of at that point where, with like you said, the veterans played last night. They're probably not going to play tomorrow. Not most of them, anywhere. Not the big guys. I assume Thornton's not going to play, whatever, and what have you. What do we think about some of these guys, some of these bubble guys? I mean, is anyone going to make the team here out of any of these, like these, the LeBlancs, I mean, I certainly don't think Meyer has any shot. He's going to have to play in the AHL just to get to game speed, whatever. But, I mean, anything like that? I mean, do any of these guys even have an outside shot at this point?
I think they do. I think Goodrow probably has the best chance. He made the team out of camp last year. He made the team out of camp the year before. Probably shouldn't have then, but the Sharks were in a position where they, had to have him there.
Yeah,
exactly. But I think more than the other guys, he has that kind of 3-zone responsibility that Pete DeBoer loves. And Gaudreau's gotten minutes on the penalty kill this preseason. LeBanc and Goldobin played there in practice yesterday because they were using the top 2 power play units and they needed bodies to play on the penalty
kill. Can you
kill.
imagine watching Nikolai Goldobin play on the penalty kill in the NHL?
It was an interesting experience. I don't want to say he was like, he was pretty well in position, but like he's 21 years old. He doesn't have a ton of defensive experience. He was on a Sarnia team that was awful, and this just needed him to score. And then he went to Finland, didn't play a ton there. Last year was really his first, full exposure to needing to play a strong 2-way game on North American ice. So, there's been flashes. He was so good offensively, possession-wise in that last game against Anaheim, and he was like dominant. I mean, we're talking like 60 to 70% score adjusted possession numbers. And I think you see his ability in the offensive zone, but the defensive zone's a question mark. He took a hooking penalty on a back check. I think he could benefit from more time in the AHL and, working on that two-way game, but I'm not as down on him as some of the other writers. Friend of the blog, Kevin Kurz, wrote that he looked like a KHL All-Star the other night. I still think Goldobin's going to have a place in the NHL. I just think that offensive ability is too good. And LeBanc, I think, he just kind of came out of nowhere. He's had an incredible camp. He was an incredible scorer in junior. I think he's shown that he's a lot readier than people thought. I don't think he's going to make the team right away, but if I had a hot Sharks take to drop, I think LeBanc is the first call-up before Goldobin is this year. I think that's how well LeBanc has played and how he's kind of, taken the reins here. And I think you can trust him a little more defensively than you can Goldobin. But that's not to say that Nikolai Goldobin is a lost cause. I think the Barracuda are going to be very fun this year. And to start the year, you could have all of Goldobin, Gaudreau, Meyer, and LeBanc down there. Very promising for the Sharks.
And with Tim Heed also. That is going to be just a freaking I would be happy to go to several Barracuda games this year. They're going to be good.
Yeah, they're going to be – it's kind of reminiscent of the Marlies last year, a lot of young talent and the right amount of veterans. Whether they can take the reins, that remains to be seen. But I think they're going to be very fun, and it bodes well for the Sharks' future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that's worth going into, at least at some point in the future, something I thought about before, is that I know we talk about this kind of the two-way game thing, right? And it's kind of like, okay, right. So if you could have a guy that is like a +3 on offense and a +3 on defense, or a guy that's a +8 on offense and a 0 on defense, which guy do you take, right? In the NHL, they're always going to take the first guy. And I think that that's a huge flaw because scoring is so hard in the NHL that I think that if you have the right line mixture, which is your job as a coach, spoiler alert, that you can have a guy out there that's a defensive liability and still, control the puck more often than
I agree. I think, if you can shelter a line pretty well, but, I was looking at some of the usage last year, and DeBoer didn't really shelter anyone. There was a lot of even, amount of defensive zone starts, which is, why it kind of amazes me. And, we can get into it a little bit. I don't think Chris Tierney is going to be a liability as the third line center, but, he didn't face extremely tough zone starts last year, and he wasn't a great possession player, and the Sharks' quality of competition too didn't really diversify that much from line to line. We're talking about a 0.1% difference from each player. So I agree. I think if DeBoer did want to shelter his lines more and use guys in like a sheltered role, I think you'd absolutely take a Goldobin. But he's pretty. I think last year showed he's pretty consistent about pretty much lining up guys, wherever. I mean, we saw Nick Spaulding line up against Sidney Crosby when the Sharks had last change in the Stanley Cup final. DeBoer wants solid two-way play from everybody, so he doesn't really have to worry about matchups, it seems.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely – I know that Todd McClellan was really heavy on line matching, and so that's something that certainly I had become accustomed to. I think we knew kind of from the get-go that Pete DeBoer was certainly not going to be to that extent. But, the fact that he doesn't really do it at all is it's not great. That's a little concerning for me. And I think that a lot of people are going to get a really rude awakening with Chris Tierney this season. And I don't want to be too hard on the guy because I do think he's a good fourth line center. Kid is not good enough to play third line center in the NHL, and he is going to get eaten alive. And it's going to be. I think he can definitely get there. I think he's got the skill. Sure. Yeah, he's still extremely young. Yeah, absolutely.
And they've definitely, DeBoer said he's earned the shot at the third line center, and I think after that playoff, you got to at least try him there and see if he's improved. But DeBoer's even said he's like, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world if we move him down to the fourth line because it's all about creating mismatches. I think if Meyer was healthy, we'd be looking at a different situation because I think they were really going to give him a look with the Joes up top, and I think that's him
being sick kind of put a wrench in the whole
exactly
tryouty thing. I know, and I agree. Yeah, you're right.
And they don't see I think Goldobin could be a fit up there, but they see Meyer's two-way game is stronger and a better fit with the Joes, and
I think so too, because then because it allows Thornton especially to take more chances and be more creative. So I think that's smart on their part, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think I think Meyer, when he gets healthy, will get a long look with the team. He doesn't have to get sent down to junior, so you don't have to worry about giving him the 9-game try. And that's honestly the good thing with these guys and how well they've played. We mentioned how good the Barracuda are going to be, but they don't have to send anybody back to junior after 9
all
games.
Of their young talent is pretty much is at the 20 year mark now, so we're kind of safe.
Which they weren't in that position 2 years ago, and I think that speaks to how well. Yeah, that speaks to how well that Doug Wilson's really restocked the farm. That they have, they can afford to wait on a lot of these players, and that they have these young players that are knocking on the door and ready to assume roles.
Right, absolutely. All right, so we've got last preseason game tomorrow night in Anaheim. That game will be available on NHL Network. If you live in the Southern California area, it'll be on Prime Ticket, what I believe is what the Ducks are on. The game will not be streaming legally anywhere, but I'm sure that life will find a way for all. We will be back, I assume. Well, we should try to be back before the start of the season. So let's plan on doing that. This is how we schedule things right here, live on the air, behind the scenes. Incredible. This professionalism. Okay, we've got a lot of good stuff on the website right now. We've got Marcus's recap from last night, a couple of stories, one on Mikhail Bodker and David Schlemko. Also, you should check that out. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Sundstrom and at Fear the Fin. Marcus at Marcus P. White. We'll be back on Tuesday. Thank you for joining us, guys. Always a pleasure.